And Bernice has been working in textiles for almost 20 years. She's been coming to India. And she started going to the Northeast at a time when a lot of Indians were not allowed in Northeast.
Right.
So at that time it was easier for a lot of foreigners to access the Northeast. So she started photographing what was happening there.
Should I get a chair for you?
Good, wonderful.
And this is Heidi, who is our hostess.
Welcome everyone. Thank you for coming all the way out here to APJ Arts.
And she's the curator of APJ Arts. Those of you who haven't seen it yet, there's a nice show by Samar.
Yeah, they've been there until the first day.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, and Bernice is now finally doing a book on her photographs over the years of the Northeast. She first went there to look at textiles, which she included in a book on Indian textiles that she's written. She's also was living there for a few years, working on this big museum on Naga heritage, which was actually going to house a private collection of father and son, who have amassed this huge collection, about 6,000 works of art from one tribe. And Bernice was sort of the mediator between the Indian government and them, and trying to raise funds from the Indian government, and of course that ran into issues we won't go into. So that's it. I mean, great that we could all meet.
Yes.
I think the reason, would you like to say something about why you thought of having something on the Northeast? Briefly, yes.
Yeah. Right.
You haven't met Fumi and Yuki, who are also textile designers, and they have a company called Calico. And Mr. Bheda, hi. Mr. Bheda is a textile designer, also from NID. He's done one of the works for that show.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. Good. Yeah, we thought about having this show, this talk, in part because the exhibition that we have on at the moment in the galleries, which is in the next building, is based on a body of photographs that was taken in the Northeast by Samar Joda. And it's based on specifically on the different kinds of materials that are used by miners in the Northeast to build their shelter. So it takes place in the Northeast, so we thought let's try and design a series of events that relate in some way to the show. And so fashion and design, Northeast, seemed like one of the themes that we wanted to explore.
Great. Yeah. So I want to start with you, Sona.
Yeah.
You were born and you grew up in Sikkim. And tell us about your story, and how did Delhi happen? How did Lift happen?
So the thing is that I'm partly Tibetan and partly Maharashtrian. So then I was exposed to Tibetan culture very early in my life. And having been brought up in Sikkim and being exposed to that kind of culture, that I didn't think much about it growing up. But when I went to college, I went to Calcutta College, and then I was in Lift. And
so you went Lift in Delhi?
Yeah, I was in Lift in Delhi. What was interesting was that when I went there and I had to do my final collection, it was interesting because I needed to do a storyline that had something that had a language of its own. So that was the first point that I actually delved into my Tibetan background. So I did a beautiful collection of what the monks wear. It's called the sen. That fabric is basically hairy silk. And when I finished, I thought it was the beginning of my whole journey because I started delving more and more into that particular textile. The buri that we use, that particular textile, it actually comes from ancient Tibet. It's now woven in Assam. It comes very simple. And the thing is, it has so many connotations because in the warmth it keeps you, in the cold it keeps you warm, in the heat it keeps you cool. It's very interesting. So that was the beginning that I started using that textile. And you think about it, when I finished my fashion school, I thought I needed to know so much more about traditions in India. So I started sort of traveling, working on different things, doing a lot of projects, etc. And it was much later, it was only in 1999 that I stumbled across thinking that I finally had a language to be able to speak.
Okay.
So I started this entire movement into moving into my own history, into my own culture, and started understanding where Sikkim is based, because it's a state which has Bhutan in the east, it has Nepal in the west, it has Tibet in the north, and it has India in the south. And it's very interesting because Sikkim has also been a big part in the old days of the Silk Route. So it's
I
very,
didn't know that.
yeah, it's a part of the Silk Road. So it's incredible because the kind of brocades that you see, the textiles we furnish, having brought up in special festivals and special events that we call Losar and Losar, which is the New Year's, we see these beautiful textiles which come out slightly enveloped. And you know, they take it very callously because they don't realize how old it is, you know, how beautiful. And somehow because I was from the design world, I was able to understand. So I started collecting all this. And that is when I started really understanding deeper into what I was from. You know, and what was interesting was also the amalgamation of textile, because you had the brocade which was probably woven in Tibet or China. But the motifs, because the weavers were Muslims, you know, so they wove Islamic weaves, Islamic motifs on those which were again lined with Indian indigo, which is fascinating. And that was the beginning of my journey into sort of creating my line, which has a beautiful sort of mix between Indo-Asian silhouettes and shapes and textiles, which sort of now incorporate a lot of Indian textiles.
Okay.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Can everybody hear? Deirdre, can you hear? Yeah. Okay, if we need these here, so we can hear.
Rajiv, Nalin, can you hear?
Yeah.
Otherwise we can use a mic. We just thought make it intimate, so okay, great. So in a way, your location within the Indian fashion industry has become very much about representing a certain region, and that's, you say that it was a certain kind of process that led you to it. It wasn't so conscious when you began.
Yes, it was more subconscious.
So today, do you identify yourself more consciously than you did earlier? And in that sense, is the identity that in many ways you had taken for granted or that you were not so conscious about, are you playing with that a little more actively today, or is that happening?
I think there's an evolution to it, you know, because the identity is more, it's universal, it's more global. In fact, when I showed my first collection at the 2003 Fashion Week, I immediately showed my line in Le Terre in Paris. And it was interesting how the international people understood my line immediately. They wanted to buy it. I had stores from London, from Paris, from New York, who wanted to, and I still show them. But in the Indian world, I mean, I had journalists who was asking, which country are you representing? You know, which show are you showing? I was like completely shocked. I just couldn't understand where they were coming from, because I showed an aesthetic or a sensitivity, which I only personally understood back then. But I find now, for example, like we're having this panel discussion, and I've been working on this for the last 15 years on my own. And it's interesting how we have Bernice who's been covering it in our own way in Nagaland. And the thing is that the Northeast is, the word itself is a misnomer. Because you know, there's 7 different states with different cultural diversities, we have different languages, and we have different tribes.
And very specific design culture.
Exactly. And there's a very strong design culture, as well as textile culture. And fashion per se has at 2 levels. There's traditional fashion, which I'm very deeply interested in. But there's also modern fashion, which is contemporary, which is related to rock bands, music, Western styling, etc.
Great, I'm glad you picked up, you started this conversation about the politics of clubbing everything together, because it's something I'd love to return to. But Genjam, coming to you, I mean, you were sort of making an almost similar journey.
Yeah.
In what way was it different? In what way was it similar to Sonam? Because you were making this journey almost 15 years later. And today your work is sort of recognized. I mean, we know that you reference your own region in your work, but also it has a certain kind of international character, which again, like Sonam, it amalgamates Western silhouettes. It embraces embroideries. It embraces the kind of embroideries that are not associated with the Northeast. So in some ways, it even goes beyond the binaries of your region and this Western sensibility. It embraces a certain pan-India sort of sensibility as well. So why don't you share with us, I mean, what was your journey? And
So, I'm come from Arunachal, and I come from a very small village in Arunachal actually. It's a very small village, and till today, if I have to go back home, if I go by road, it takes me 5 days to reach, and if I go by flight, it will at least take me 3 days to reach. So when I came to Delhi, looking for a new life. I mean, I wanted to get away from what the kind of life I have in village. So I came to Delhi, and I was trying my best to be gel more together into modern life. I mean, I was trying my best to be more contemporary, totally forgetting about my roots. I was trying to be, because that's the life I was living in the village. And when you come to Delhi, I was totally looking for a new life. So then the same thing was reflecting in my design also. I mean, I was trying to do something else. I was looking at the different things for the inspiration, but not my root, not the Arunachal. But then every time I do a collection, at some point I always realize that somehow somewhere my root inspiration is already there. But it's all like very subconscious. I was not trying anything. It was just happening itself. And with the time, I started realizing that, I mean, I think this is where my strength lies. I think I should start work on this. I should look at my root more and do something more about it. So in this past say 2-3 years, I've been inclining more towards my root, and I kind of already did full collection out of it. But I'll say it's not directly. It's more like a visual, more visual. It's more like my memories growing up in village. It's more visual. So I have not really worked directly with the craft people and all those stuff. I mean, yeah, as I say, I've not worked directly. It's just like visual. But I hopefully in a coming time, I want to work with these things. And that's because also when I go back to village, I see all this young boy, young generation. They're totally living they totally like me. Even if they live in a village, and I left the village, I came to Delhi, look for the new life. I try to be modern, more contemporary. But if I go back to village and I see this young generation, there's nothing like me when I was growing up. I grew up in a forest, in a jungle, totally like a village world, totally like a tribal world. But now I see the new generation. They're very modern. They copy all the international, like Sonam say, more like rock and roll, more more contemporary. But then again, they just look contemporary. They don't really look back. They totally ignoring our roots. I can see our tradition is kind of slowly dying, slowly dying. It's just the older generation who's still practicing the things. So now I feel as a designer, I think I should look at it, and I feel now with the time I feel a little responsibility also that being a designer I should do something about it, make the design more contemporary, more current oriented, so that the young generation can find interest about it. So this is the angle now I think I want to work on it. And as I said, I did that two collection which is inspired by Arunachal, but as I say visually. But now in the next few years, I want to go back and work with our traditional craft people and all those things, and give the new perspectives which is more current and more young, which is more relevant for this current generation. Yeah, more contemporary.
You know what you're sharing about this, about going back and finding people, of a certain age group, sort of trying to make this leap, which doesn't have this link, is something you've spoken about. And you've spoken about how over the last 20 years that you visited Northeast multiple times, you find more and more people sort of aspiring to a new set of values. So, can you give us some idea of, over the years, what are the distinct things in design cultures that you've seen changing in that region? I know, I'm sorry, but I'm clubbing this whole region, but I'll be specific. No, it is. I think we need to be, because I know that, for instance, in Berenice's case, she's worked more with the tribes in Nagaland. So, could you give us some sense of what are the kind of shifts you observe?
This is about 15 years ago. It was, of course, very American kind of. The young people were dressing more like this, and then there has been, and so up to now they're not very interested in wearing these traditional shows and this only for festival, and or sometimes when they really talk about identity, but it's more like a political kind of statement. It's not really something that they want to wear because they find it fancy or nice, or that they like it, but just to make a statement. And that we are Nagas, and we are this tribe, and we Sema, we are Angami, or like this. And then there has been a lot of influence by the Korean, because they look at a lot of Korean films. So then you have a lot of the hairstyle, the colors, the boys are very this Korean.
It's all Gangnam style.
Yeah. fashion for fashion actually.
Yeah.
And now and the use of course the Naga textiles, but it's very funny because there are so many of these fashion shows. Every event in a village, every kind of festival, then you have these fashion shows and this beauty queen contest and these fashion shows. And of course but then it's not the abouti, how do you say abouti? Yeah, the way they use the textiles it's not that they take just a symbol of it and they make
it's not cut and paste.
Exactly, yeah. So they will just wrap it in a different way or make it shorter or put it with especially for girls. For boys it's more like more type, leopard or kind of hunter kind of outfit. But I mean, it's how you look is very, very important because I think that it's also a very old tradition. I mean, because people were wearing every shawl, every tribe was wearing a different outfit, and you could know who these people are. So it's very, it really matters for them. Much more than probably in the city world. It's really a statement and identity. Identity.
In fact, somebody was sharing with us recently. Do you need us to use mics? Are we audible? Okay. So somebody was recently sharing that actually, in government schools now in Assam, a lot of kids are wearing their own traditional clothes and going to school. So, and the school was, as we all know, growing up in Delhi, it was like the uniform in India was like this. It was like this, something that matched closest to this, campaign of unity in diversity, because we all were kind of clubbed under one idea of what modern or contemporary India is, without these kinds of ethnic associations. And somebody was sharing how these kinds of identities are becoming increasingly important again today in several states in the Northeast, which echo, what we were talking about, this kind of political identity movements in the 60s and 70s.
Modernization of India now. It's like you correctly said, it's because of modernization of India, and I think the fear is that there's this uniformity which is coming in.
So do you think it's a natural response, or is there something particular that you observe in the region that's happening? Because we don't see that in the rest of the country. So, could you help us, could you, all three of you, help us understand what is it that might be happening there right now, which reflects all of this, which might be more peculiar to the region?
Yeah, I can talk of the region that I come from.
Yeah,
in the sense that even though traditional forms, like we have the Chuba, we have the apron and the Monjus here, it's interesting how now they use it with modern textiles, So they keep the tradition alive by wearing the old, but sort of resurface, not very well made, but it's still sort of keeping to that. Because they're more comfortable. So like you correctly said, for events or maybe Independence Day or things like that, or little parties, they always dress up in traditional costume, but it's not necessarily the old traditional costume. So they try to, and it's what Bernice said exactly, is that I think in the Northeast there is a change, identity is changing really fast also, like the whole of India, I think. And to hold on to your identity is extremely important with the changes that are happening around you.
And yet what you're saying that there is innovation within the repertoire.
Yes, the repertoire.
So what's happening is there is an active, it's not just a binary of keeping to an old tradition and a completely new sort of aspirational form, but that there is innovation within that, which is interesting.
But also in the same breath, the places like in Assam, for example, where they have such beautiful mugas and areas, which are slowly disappearing because there obviously the dislocation, the demographics of life is changing. Because people are moving to the cities, they don't want to work within the looms, and so this sort of thing is also disappearing. The traditional proper looms and textiles are generally disappearing, which is a dangerous thing.
The NID and IGNC had done this huge project on documenting crafts from the Northeast states for about 5 years. And one of the things they mentioned, they were sharing earlier in the year, was that cotton is no longer, nothing is made in cotton.
Yeah.
So, traditional shawls which were made in cotton, is this cotton?
No.
Okay, so basically what you're saying, the materials are changing, the forms are staying the same. But that amounts to a great, even then, that amounts to a great level of holding on to something.
Yeah, so holding on to
And that's That's interesting. How about you? I mean,
Yeah,
any
you know, when I was
reflection?
growing up, I mean, I think I was the last generation of, I mean, you know, the generation which have seen in a village, like the village lady, I mean, you know, making the thread out of the cotton, which like they'll pluck it from the field and they literally like, you know, make it out. Like they churn with their hand. I mean, I mean, as a child, I remember some of the like, you know, grandmothers which are not there anymore. I mean, you know, they used to make those weaves out of it, and this always used to be in a black. And I remember they always used to be a blanket or a shawl, you know. But now I don't see that anymore. It's completely like gone. I mean, all this cotton thing has been replaced by the synthetic called acrylic, you know, acrylic. So I asked many times. I mean, I went back to Shillong to do a show, Meghalaya, and then we visit cluster and all those things. I asked those people, why do you use this synthetic thing? I mean, you know, I mean if you replace this with a cotton, I mean your market will increase. I mean, you can sell it anywhere. I mean, right now what they do is, I mean, such a beautiful design, beautiful colors. They put so much effort, but then you can sell it only in our own region. You know, you can't sell it out of our region because in place like Delhi and all, nobody want to wear it. Nobody want to wear an acrylic, you know, kurta or acrylic shawl. You know, if they make it out of cotton, I mean, they say like it's very difficult to do with a cotton, but they don't realize that if you do it out of cotton, you have more market value. You know, you have more place to like sell it. You know. So I think that's where I mean.
But why are they not
That's
making
the same
cotton?
argument.
So that's something they say like
No, they say it's
like,
easier.
They say
They say
it's easier, and they don't understand the bigger picture. They think like, okay, we sell in our own state, that's enough. That's what they feel.
Yeah.
So now that's why I mean our government is really trying to, you know, bring it back and make them use the cotton this thing. And they have like the lots of distinct projects, lots of projects are there. But then I feel like it's going to the wrong hand actually. I mean,
Because you must understand the terrain is very wet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So a lot of fabrics, you know, they don't stay. I mean, everything gets damp very fast. These are certain things about the topography that one has to take into account.
That's
When you're keeping textiles there, you know, like even if you have these beautiful old capes that I have, the old Tibetan capes, they're all eaten up by moths over there. Within a year, you cannot get it. So I think that's another reason why things have gone into
It's one of the
spinning
main
into another.
it's real reason. They say it also there on the Manipur and Nagaland, it's the same, because you can keep it, it doesn't go rotten and it doesn't.
So basically what we're getting is that there's one kind of work that's happening in, let's say, design cultures where there is some kind of innovation within the system or within the repertoires where you would see material changes like what we're talking about. One end of it is that, another aspect is that you have, you know, things like Eri, Muga, all of these things which are becoming very high-end products.
Yeah.
A lot of these are being channeled through high-end designers and fashion designers like you and the kind of work that you do. Showing it both internationally as well as at events like Fashion Week. What are the other ways in which you think this kind of appreciation or interest is being continued? I know you were trying to work on a museum. I also understand that you were trying to create some kind of a museum. So,
See,
so
I've
can you?
always had fascination for languages for some reason.
Okay.
So that's so I'm working with somebody who's a researcher, and he's got a team of people who are working with the old languages that are slowly disappearing.
Is it Andy?
No, it's not Sanya. So the whole thing is the lower Himalayan ranges have these beautiful languages, and a lot of languages are also created through, you know, shouting through the mountains because they didn't have. So the languages are created like that sometimes, you know. So this loss of languages is something that is slowly disappearing in our country, and it's culturally happening. It's also because these mountains are being broken down, you know. And sometimes when you link places which are isolated, they disappear. It's incredible because when they're isolated, they live longer, they live more beautifully. You know, they live on their own. And the moment you link them to real life, they just disappear. So somehow sustainable tourism, sustainable economics is something that we still have to progress into. I think it's an India issue.
But do you think formats like a museum or a design center, these kinds of institutions could help and provide another aspect to what's happening in more commercial areas? And if so, what are the kind of, I mean, because I mean a lot of us are sort of in more mainstream spaces like here where we're actually now trying to question museums in India because where for years, for about 60 years, India has debated why museums don't work in India. And instead of importing Western concepts of how to make them
Yeah.
work, which includes in many cases very expensive conservation, technology and all of that, we're trying to say, I think where we belong to a generation now, we're trying to say, hey, can we relook at the idea of the museum itself? So in the same way, I mean, what could be some of the ideas for such a center in the kind of states that you work with? And for us, it would be interesting to know what are the urgent issues there, which could lead us to, I mean, you know, as a next set of questions, I'd like to talk about the problems. You know, we're only talking about what are the
For
opportunities.
example, the Samuel was discussing is because of the earthquakes that happen in cities. So the architectural part is that it's architecturally built with the old forms, you know, which sort of works not just because it's bamboo and things like that, but also works against earthquakes.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. So the whole museum to be built with this form, you know. So apart from languages itself, sorry about the but also there's a textile story, and it's about, and also to have music, for example, which is a big part, food, you know. So elements which are connected to the space, I think to the region is extremely important. When you have a museum which is more holistic and people can actually participate, I think is very important.
Do you see some kind of activity or interest in people like yourselves in other fields, like architecture, other aspects of design, who are now interested in going back and actually looking at some of these kinds of issues and working in this field? Do you find that there's a beginning of a certain movement? I mean, for instance, I know certain colleagues of mine from the NID who, after having worked for years in Bombay and Delhi, have just decided to go back and start working in Sikkim again. And so, I mean, do you see that could we recognize that as a trend, is what I'm trying to ask? Is that number sufficient now? Is there a sense, so, I mean, could we give this kind of movement a sort of a time today and saying that there is significant, I mean, all three of you, do you feel that there are people in other fields going back? Because then that could create an ecology of what you're talking about.
I don't know, because there is a try of using, doing new buildings or trying to make structures in bamboo, and they're still very good at it. I mean, but in the same time, what people want there, they want hard, solid, cement, concrete things. And if you come with a project of an eco-friendly building, or even for a museum, they don't go for it. It's just, I think it might happen in some 10 years or something like this. I don't know, but still people are not ready for it. They want something really that looks modern, that looks.
So where is that coming from? I mean, where is that sort of aspiration coming from? Is it because people are traveling more? Is it?
No, because they don't. I mean, they see the buildings in other places. Even if they don't see them. I mean, they see on the internet, because internet is in many places, and they just want something that looks contemporary. So for them, if you use bamboo and stones, it doesn't come.
Yeah, that's why for a museum it works. Because you know, so what we're trying to say that it can be replicated by other people who are building it. So that was a basis on which we're trying to build the form.
So is that something that you're trying to do in Sikkim?
Yeah.
Because I heard about it.
Yeah.
So I was just
We're
curious
just
to
talking right now, but we're under a conversation with various people, researchers, and working together.
I want to move on to a second set of, questions, and after that, because we have a small, intimate group, perhaps we could just make it a broader conversation about the problems. I mean, we all know that you guys, in many ways, have taken a leap that, for various reasons, may not have been accessible to other people for whatever reason. What are the problems in that region that we need to be more aware about, that we need to sort of address more in terms of creating a broader conversation about design in India? Because we're also at this moment, I know Ishan is doing some work on this. We're questioning how to create histories of design in India right now, and I think in these kinds of conversations it becomes really important how we keep these histories, that it's not a history, but that they are histories of design in India. So I mean, what are the kind of urgent questions in this field that you feel are coming up? Are they at a generic level? We spoke about, you were talking about Arunachal, how tribes are becoming more sort of fragmented. So I mean, are they at a level of generic political issues that affect every aspect of life and culture? Are there specific issues?
No, there are specific issues as well as generic issues, but I can again speak of Sikkim. The thing is that because it's connected to the Southeast of Asia, the whole of Northeast. I think the thing is that you need to understand that it is a broader structure. You know, it's like a corridor between two big lands. So there's every influences that come in are from textiles to food to culturally so different, you know, from mainland India at one level. So when you mix the two together, it takes a while to understand because I've been mixed. I was brought up there, and then I went to Bombay to see my father's family, which was completely shocking. To start with, I mean, it was interesting we having this conversation in the car, and I said I didn't understand the caste system when I came, you know, because from my father's side the caste system was very strong, because he was from the Kshatriya tribe.
Okay.
He was Maharashtra, he was very particular because of the Hindu structure. And it was bizarre for me because I didn't understand it because in the East you don't have a structure like that. We have a class system, which is obviously the way you wear textiles and you know, the way you treat each other, or you know, from either poorer or richer. It's just an economic thing, as well as, but at the same time there is a sensitivity between the class system. It's not a difference, you know. So that was something interesting for me because it took a long time for me to understand that these are two different cultures altogether. Because I was just a regular child who grew up, went to two different spaces, and because I was sensitive, I started understanding that there were these differences. So going back to the region, I think it's important to realize that there is an identity, like you mentioned earlier, which is individual, but yet it's absorbing from a much bigger picture, you know, sort of Asiatic at one level, and yet it's Indian at the other.
That's very interesting.
And it's a combination, it's an amalgamation of both, which has to be understood, you know, in terms of everything from food habits to, you know, because everything is a little strange on both sides.
And then the amazing thing is also that people are very, very creative. They always been creative. I mean, they do their own stories. They sing. They dance. They don't go to theater whatsoever. And it has been going on since very long time and creating songs and having two languages in every village. They have a normal language and they have a lyrical language that young people don't understand. When the elders receive me and talk and sing to me, they don't talk, they sing to me. And then I ask this fellow to translate for me and I say, I don't understand this language, it's too philosophical. And so it's quite amazing. And so this creativity is still there, but just the exposure is maybe not the right one. If you see, I don't know if you see TV series, because there is this desire of doing things, but also of imitation, but they don't have the right exposure to them in design, in everything. Now, even you know,
the Northeast is very unique. People are very intuitive.
Yeah.
For example, the sculpture, they were great sculptors, and but these sculptures were made it was ritual sculptures. They were made for a certain thing, and now they are asked to sculpt again for the market, so they're going to make things that which just really important, and they don't look the same because they're not inhabited the same way. And they try to make it pretty, and they're going to varnish it, and at the end of the day, it's just really not nice. But the skills are here, and the desire of doing is just the inspiration is, they don't dig the inspiration in the right, from the right sources, because the sources are
imitating. But both of you, what you said was that, I mean, is there a very strong sense of orality in culture there that comes through even now?
Jacob will be able to tell you more. Oral culture.
Yeah, oral cultures and...
It is there. I mean, if you only look at Arunachal, there's so many tribes. We have around 20 main tribes and hundreds of sub-tribes. And each tribe has their own language. Even me being Arunachali, it's difficult for me to understand half the culture. Okay, I will know about certain culture which which is surround my village, but it's like huge. It's huge. And again, like when we say like people are very talented there. I mean, they want to show their creativity. They want to like put it out across. But the problem is how to do it. There is no source. Like for myself, I mean, I never wanted to be a designer. I came to Delhi to do other things, Then that's because I don't know. I mean, I have no source how to be a designer, If only I came to after I came to Delhi that okay, I could be a designer, There was college where I can go and study fashion designing, So this is the one thing which I think really need a place in Northeast, like I think like place to go and learn and more exposure. More exposure, I would say. And again, when you say the problem about how to create identity for the Northeast, like art and craft, do art and craft. So I think, we being people from Northeast, we study the art and culture of rest of the India. We do study in books and all those things. So we already have some knowledge about it. But the people who live in this side, in the other part of the India, like say northern, this side of India, they have no clue what is Northeast. What is Northeast? That's where the biggest problem lies, because they have no clue. They know nothing about it. So this, I think, is the biggest problem. Where I think, we need to start in a very initial school level, teach something about Northeast, so that at least they know some basic, basic. And when you know basic, it's always easier to understand the bigger picture. Yeah, that's what I feel.
Great. Shall we invite questions? And
I just have one thing about identity. I was in Kutch, and there was the famous earthquake that happened, massive earthquake. Most of the mud houses were okay, but the brick and cement houses collapsed. And lo and behold, people didn't build mud houses. After the earthquake, they built brick and cement houses. So I think there's this whole trend. It's not just in the Northeast. I think it's probably all over India to westernize or whatever, use different technologies and wear different clothes. This whole the knockoffs people wear, and so the whole identity. People want to move away from their tradition for whatever
They
reason.
don't want to look
Aspiration.
backwards, If you have a mud house, you look backwards.
But I think Maya, what you said is quite correct. The look backwards, what you're saying is very interesting, because everybody wants to move out of their own space rather than go back to it. It takes a while before they like you.
perhaps these are also we see them in every generation as
Yes.
cycles. I'm just trying to understand that you have a generation that likes to completely fracture, and then there's a generation that wants to go back, and these kinds of.
But go back to what sometimes? No?
That's the
society can be there.
The analogy I often use when we talk about these kinds of cycles is the slow food movement. Because when I was in college in New York, natural foods and making your own was like a new thing. Practically. And it's the same here, that slow food, actual food cuisine is now catching on here. Organic food and preparing your own things at home, but maybe in terms of more nuanced cultural aspects like design, we are not, and certainly in the Northeast, we're not at the slow food level. We still want the fast food. McDonald's,
the other thing is also,
the new thing. You have to have enough
what
of
you
that.
said
Get sick of
correctly.
that until you want to go back.
Yeah.
Be saturated.
Yeah, talking about the slow food thing, the thing is that in the Northeast is very naturally, very ecologically friendly. People are very aware of recycling. We grew up with preservation naturally in the house. So you use the bamboo to save things. You use natural things constantly, and it's a part of your life. It's so funny because now it's a big trend, because it's something, and it's so important what he just correctly said. If there's more education and there's more openness about the Northeast, you could actually involve a culture which is actually living with these sort of ways of life.
In many ways, I often draw this analogy between cities that I've traveled to in the Northeast and cities in Kerala.
Yeah.
Because there's a very lucid kind of relationship shift. It's not really as sudden as we see it in the rest, especially in the plains, like the North Indian plains. Sort of within 5 kilometers, everything changes. It seems that there is a certain kind of, there's a gradation to that kind of movement into a city or outside of it. And I think that's a valuable resource. To be able to I think increasingly people in urban sort of planning issues are saying that we have to build cities which have a better relationship. I
Yeah.
mean, you go to the highway in Gurgaon and there are farms there, but we never realized that we actually live so close to that kind of a reminder to an ecology that we come from. Or like for instance, Ami was sharing that, you know, everyone complains in August to September, all of us feel it in Delhi that it's very humid. And it's humid, Rahul was sharing this with me, because apparently the traditional ecology, like the foliage of Delhi is, I'm slightly going off, but there's a point to it, saying that the foliage is a desert climate, semi-arid. So actually, traditionally Delhi has shrubs. But suddenly, because in the last 150 years, we've had these sort of hill forests and these, you know, pines and these flowers planted, somehow it can't retain, you know, so it gives out the water because, it's, you know, so I mean, in a way, kind of, you don't get that, you understand that only if you live in these kinds of geographies where there's a great relationship between the rural and, you know, that they're not that absolute. It's something that has always stayed with me from in Sikkim, in Shillong, in the few places that I've visited, which I find very similar to Kerala.
Yeah, it is.
You
Yeah.
know, that you gradually move in.
Yeah.
Can I just make a point? You know, I was just walking around, I was looking at the coffee table books, and these books are also a very strong medium of educating the people. And I was wanting to buy something, because I come from the Northeast, right? I come from Assam. So I wanted to, you know, get a book from the Northeast tribal textiles, and trust me, it's really, really hard because the research, as you know, the research, you don't, I mean, what, for a person like me, if I want to do some research, where do I go to? Other than my own experience and then physically going there. And the problem with the Northeast, I think, is also the connect between Northeast and the rest of the country. There's a problem, you know, we need to have proper road conditions to get the education, and we need more researchers to go and write about the textiles, so that, you know, books are the biggest medium of imparting education to the next generation. We don't have that. It's what we learn in the Northeast about cultures, about fabric. It's what my mom said, what the local weavers say, and I learn it and I pass it down to my friends or my children. That's the way. But, you know, it's really hard to go into research. So I think that's also really important, because you need visual, you need the printed work. Yeah.
I think that's a great point. I mean, there are 100 books on
We don't
touch.
have a lot of people writing.
We could
Yeah.
find 6 that we could share with this group
Yeah.
today. So,
I think that's really one point, because I was walking around, and this is like something that intrigues me.
So why is that? I mean, is it because the interest of mainstream India is so recent?
I think
Or is
so,
it
yeah.
because the infrastructure in terms of roads and
I think
transportation hasn't been there?
I think what's happening is that the Northeast has been extremely neglected. Now it's coming back into focus. So we need to encourage educationists, fashion designers, graphic, to go, to take pictures, to write. We don't have that. That is a complete, there's a complete empty in that bank. And that's really, really important, because every tribe, like I come from Assam, people don't buy Assam silk. Even the silk yarn comes from Chennai, because the weavers don't want to weave anymore, because there's deforestation, there's no rain. If there's no rain, mulberry can't grow, muga and eri. And Assam has a lot of they do a lot of you know, blending. They have, you know, muga with bamboo, muga with eri. So there's a lot of, but they make one, they make two. So all these, yes, and all these things are not documented. We don't know that this is happening. Documentation, I think, is a very part of history. That's what history is. It goes down through document. We learn.
Normally you have the weaver service centers. You have the one.
Yes, the weaver training centers are like not really like you.
Yeah, the one who actually takes
Yeah.
days before you can get the door open. There are thousands of. I mean, seen so many swatches, so beautiful, so many
Yeah.
designs in Assam.
It is beautiful. And Assam's difference between Assam and the rest of the tribal parts, the rest of the tribal, the designs are very geometric. Assam has a little bit of the it's a little bit floral. The rest of Northeast is the patterns are, because they're very geometric. So Assam is very different, but the thing is that, again, we don't know a lot about it because it's not documented. If someone from Delhi wants to know about Northeast textile, who do they go to? What's the forum? Government will.
My thinking is that you said
Yeah.
Yeah, so this might seg into the question that I've been wanting to ask, which maybe you addressed it, since I'm afraid I was a bit in and out. But Berenice, I know you're working on a book on Naga culture, textile. Can you say a little bit about what that will be
Well,
your approaches?
Actually, it's not a really very serious anthropologic book, but there is a lot of social anthropology in it. And because it's along my trips there, and interviewing the people on their own practices, on like the stories, not the fairy tales, how do you say, the tales?
Legends, myths,
folklore.
The tales of origin, and also all the kind of puja they were making before every activity in the field and all this. So it's a
So you're writing, you're
yes,
taking
I'm
photos?
writing, and there are photos, and the textile is not so much about textile, this one, but there are stories about
Kind of a
rivers
travelogue,
also.
cultural
Yeah.
travelogue, observations, slice of...
But even that helps. A travelogue observation also helps. Like, that's also
Yeah.
really, yeah.
And it's more popular.
Yeah. Instead of having like a book, even picture, yes,
to a
yeah.
wider public.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also might make other people feel like I want to go and investigate.
So here, can I share one thing from Asian perspective? So I'm look like from Northeastern. I'm from Japan. Actually.
For those of you who joined us late, sorry, Fumi and Yuki are dear friends. They run a company based out of Delhi, exporting to Japan.
Yes, so we are not a very fashion designer. We are doing the textile, and actually we are doing the activity to revitalize the traditional Indian textiles and introducing to Japan. And I'm from the social business design, and also my family is something related to the fabrics textiles business around. So I have a very individual passion toward the textiles. That's why I'm here today.
Which is you worked for 10 years in hardcore corporate marketing, right?
Yeah, kind of.
So you bring those skills, which is
very
required to the
important,
craft
actually.
sector.
Yes. So I'm kind of, the inspiring the business modeling and the new business development. And I really want to utilize my skill in this, the very precious industry in textile. And what we try to do is, to make the very vertical outline
vertical,
inside in historical Indian textiles and also the futuristic. Because we Japanese have a both
Yes, that's
and
true.
futuristics. And so actually, I've seen a lot of the northeastern textile books in Japan.
In Japan, right?
You
Must
know,
be,
so,
I'm sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of the
It's very
researchers,
interesting.
went inside the villages and
Yes.
they already covered horizontally.
Yeah.
That's why we don't need to do much. So we just focus on the vertical side in that sense. So
I mean, it's interesting because like what you were
And Japan is
saying,
a country that's done a lot for textile. It's very,
yes,
very
and
textile,
then
research
so
forward.
Like you told, we also using the same analogy as the food, the slow food, and what we trying to do is almost similar what happened in the food industry. Because in Japan we lost the food culture in 30, 40 years back, but in 20 years we took back. We took back the sensitivity toward the food and where those are bringing and those kind of things. So we in 100 years we lost the sensitivity towards the fabric after we lost the culture of the kimono. But we still have a DNA, and we, especially the elderly ladies, really wanted to have handlooms, but it's not accessible anymore. So it's a unhappy situation. So then we try to get such market in Japan.
I think in Japan what's also happened is that you still have, like you're saying, there is an appreciation, but the technology is lost.
Yes.
So I think therefore India and Japan become very good partners in that kind of a collaboration. But what you said was, just to link to what you had earlier said, that in many ways we can see the region as a very interesting kind of microcosm of Asia, because I mean, if you look at Manipur, which has this very classical Hindu sort of tradition, which, you know, and then you have the Catholic traditions, and then you have several, you know, other kinds of sort of organized religions, and all of that seems to exist there, and in a very particular kind of way.
But there's what you said, you know, talking about textiles about Japan is very interesting, because we have the Tibetan, the chubas that we have.
Yeah.
When you structure them down, it goes back to Japan, which is the kimono, you know. So the styling, it's very funny, because years ago I went into, I was showing in Singapore, I was one of the designs there, and I showed it, and they were all waiting for a Japanese designer, because they didn't say, you're from India, but you're showing Japanese clothes, you know. And I said, no, these are not, these are from the east of India, where we do clothes like this, and it's really interesting, because they were used the same values of squares, like they have in Japan, you know. And it's so apparent that textiles have traveled.
Yeah,
We have
actually
stories.
it's borderless.
Yeah.
Borderless, because it's borderless. So.
This is such a fertile area with such knowledgeable voices for like a course curriculum. Can't you guys get together and like offer a course, JNU or Delhi? Really, it would be super valuable. And it's all here, between the 5, 6 people.
But do young Japanese girls want to, like, you know, like in India, the sari will survive because the young people want to wear it. But in Japan, you have a problem. Young girls don't want to wear it that much, other than too complicated. Yes.
That is another limitation, no? Because they like to stay where they are. That's the
They're
other.
very happy to be where they are most of the time. But what I think also about the Northeast, I mean, as Assam, all the designs appeal very much also to the international and contemporary market, because they are mostly, it's like abstract designs, because we don't know the meaning of them, because they also mean something, but they don't know. So they are geometric and
they're pattern based mostly.
Like, these flowers and things are more illustrative, and that people might not use every day, but these abstract designs. So it's also a great, it appeals to people outside the North very much.
Yeah, exactly. So that's you know, the weavers have to be motivated enough to make more. After like some time, they don't want to do it anymore because they make one in a month.
Mr. Bera,
I have done this project in Manipur. Something like this in Assam. I don't know if it's.
But this from Bengal, West Bengal, no?
Yes,
this is.
This is
This is Manipuri.
This is Manipur, yeah.
Because in Assam also you have this sari with also
Yes.
like this exactly, and it's green most of the time, green and white.
Why? It's Manipur, but you get it most because Manipur doesn't wear saris. Assam wears, so that white and green is more popular in Assam.
Like the Jamdanis, no?
Jamdanis, yes. It's like the Jamdani. It is the fabric is Jamdani only.
They weave in the Tezpur and
yes. And they sell more in Assam because it's more of a sari wearing community.
Actually, in Jamdan design, we can find a lot of the same design in Japan. Japanese kimonos, like a dandara, the square, the mountains. It is considered as a skin of a snake or a dragon.
Right, okay.
It is a talisman. So it's like that.
Yeah.
Mr. Bera, you have.
I have to share a small experience that I had done a project in Manipur which was supported by government. And somebody saying that why doesn't government do it? What happened? All the government projects, when they are presented in a seminar or they presented in a newspaper, sound fantastic. But when they get into implementation, it all becomes they are diluted, and the efforts they just get lost. So in one of such project was given to me. So that time I told DC that look, the funds I utilize in my way, and I will do the project exactly in my way, not your way. That's the only condition I am going there, otherwise not me. So they said okay. So I went there in Manipur. First 3 days I went there. I met many societies there in Imphal. And so those people looked at, okay, so many people come here and the project gets finished and we don't even get to know. So you're also one of them. But I had a plan in my mind. On the 3rd day before I got my flight, I fixed 3 societies and given them advance and already got them to buy yarn. So they were zapped. This is a government project. How can such a thing happen? Because
Yeah.
So what happened? The implementation is extremely weak, and that happens all over India. So unless only somebody takes it very personally and does it without, then only it happens. And then what happened?
I think this is something Denjum will be able to
and go to the wrong hands.
hands, yeah.
I mean,
This is get diluted.
because NGOs and all, they just make money. And
Yes,
they
true.
That's what that's the biggest problem. Otherwise, the government spending so much money.
Yeah.
I think that may be a way of like a group of people going in.
Yes,
so that,
it might, yeah.
You know, in a very kind of conscious way, like you're saying,
Yeah.
actually taking it on. You know.
Another thing I was saying that, see what happened, most of the tradition or people respond to the material which is available locally then. For example, people 50 years, whatever is available to them or what they made in their farms or what material they want, they make products out of that. Now today, when alternative starts coming in because of the travel, because of television, because of markets, because Marwadi traders are coming and introducing, oh this is a cheaper one, what do you want to buy? That's how cash flow is entered in.
Yeah.
So whatever is easily available, that material gets reflected into the work they do. So as and when the progress happens and you get exposed to more and more options, the changes start happening, and those are not deliberate. It's an entire traditional dynamics which happen. So there's no control of one person or a society. It just constantly keeps evolving, and especially that has happened for the coarser textile where cashmere has come as an alternative. But in Manipur, I realize cotton and silk are still used very extensively. Because even the woman in Manipur would still want to wear that cotton dupatta. So the cotton is extensively used in Manipur and is there. And artistic textile is constantly practiced. And those finest fabrics are woven. That continues to happen there. So these are the kind of things. So changes especially happen. The Kashmir is coming wherever the coarser textiles have been given alternative material. But not so much in silk
Finer textiles.
So
But
that's
also,
what-
you know, the thing is that, like in Sikkim as well as the whole of the Northeast, you find a lot of people from Rajasthan, basically the Marwari
Yeah.
middleman, who's come in and he plays a very important role, you know.
Yeah.
And in Sikkim it's amazing because they speak Tibetan and they speak Chinese. They're incredible.
It's the same thing in Assam also, and Assam also, yeah.
But their whole lives are, they just transform themselves into, they speak with the monks in Tibetan, they speak to the Chinese wholesalers like that. So it's fascinating to watch them, to know that they've been there for centuries, you know. So it's interesting, and they're the ones who sort of, because they're in charge of the fabric.
And for this, for the yarn, they are the one who
They are the
bring the
one-
yarn.
Yeah.
So this little merchant has always been there, and this merchant comes from the trading of the Silk Road, which is fascinating. Because years ago they were there, and they were the Indians who came, you know, all the way to do business, and they came and they found this space with the Tibetan merchants who used to come with ponies, and Chinese people used to come. It's very interesting. They have a wonderful history there, and they provide the small changes that you were talking about in terms of, you know, when fabrics change and different things, because they use their brains as fast as they can.
And it's in the market.
It's
so
in the market, yeah.
The agency is the market, so
Yeah,
you have to
Yeah.
respond.
constantly respond.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it's a really traditional source of art at one level, you know, the business people. Because I work with one of them. And it's fascinating to watch him, how he does it. And I give him ideas now when he works. Because he's working with millions and zillions of things that he's getting from tribals and working with. So I constantly try to rework. And you were quite right about that. Because of course the textiles are the ones that need.
So I think these are, apart from the design repertoires that need to be documented, these are also stories that need to be told.
Yes, everything. These are all part of the. It's, you know, it's part of the package. It's you know, you need these stories. You need stories how to reach there. Stories about textile. Stories like, you know, it's already available. It's like, you know, it's like, and yeah, like putting together an entire package.
We must have some inputs from Nalin. Nalin and his partner are among India's most leading dealers of antique Indian textiles.
Yeah, but we had very little knowledge about the Northeast.
But I mean, are there ever inquiries for textiles from the
At a
Northeast?
point, Northeast textile became a rage, artifacts. But that's about 20 years ago.
But jewelry maybe.
But yeah, jewelry, basically jewelry. Yeah.
Basically.
So, but otherwise, we know very little about the Northeast. You know.
Yeah, because the thing also is that people wouldn't part from even if somebody died, all this, most of the time the shawl will be
Yeah.
put on the
They
corpse.
didn't believe in
And
preserving
if
good
they have
textiles.
grandmother or
Yeah, I think-
mother's shawl, they will never sell it. It's a kind of maybe
Heirloom.
they will steal it and and sell it to
I mean,
you.
there's some Muslim chin
But they
textiles,
won't-
so it's
yeah.
Burma, India, Bangladesh.
I think documentation done by NID is very, very
Now
extensive.
now
And they are
it's
going to
good.
publish it soon. It's a huge
It's
document.
7 books
All the
that the NID and IGNC have
Yeah.
done over 5 years.
5 years.
So anytime now it should be launched.
But there's a fantastic museum in Shillong.
Because you went recently, so I wanted to get your
There's a fantastic museum in
inputs.
Shillong, that school.
The
Which
Don
shows
Bosco.
all the
Don Bosco
ethnic
school.
tribes
Yeah.
in their textiles, which is fabulous. It's like, it's a very modern structure, and it's like,
I think the one which is made by a priest.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Don
And it's
Bosco.
a museum?
It's a museum.
Diorama and all this.
Yeah, they have the kind of the textiles and all the artifacts going with the people of that region. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, if you ever go to
I've never
Shillong, you
seen
must
a-
visit that.
James
It's
is
one of
looking
the
at it.
best places there, I would say.
Where is that place?
Even in Manipur, there is a museum
Shillong,
by-
where-
by,
what's it called?
Ask them to Don Bosco.
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
Don
It's a
Bosco.
small house. He's got it's a private museum. He's made of textiles, artifacts, and he's already written 3-4 books there in Nepal. And whosoever goes there, if everyone dies, we must go and visit that museum because there's no government museum there.
No, there's no government
So
museum.
only one person
You're saying
goes
Imphal?
Imphal, yeah. In fact, I purchased those books and those are available. Those
There
books are
is
available.
there is a government museum.
There is Imphal.
Yeah. And it's
There's one. So in fact, what happens when you inquire, people say to this private museum because
Yes.
that was in a depleted condition.
it's not so bad.
I think that's all Indian museums, no?
Gita does your book. Gita's doing
Name the person.
an iconic book on Indian style. Does the Northeast feature at all?
Very little, but yeah, it does.
Just follow that person.
I think also we have NIFT Shillong. So I went for the graduation and it was amazing. All the graduating class of 18 students, none of them worked with the local textiles. They all worked on, like, they all came to Delhi, to the Nehru place, sourced their fabric, went back and they did a collection. So, I was very sad to see that, the reason NIFT is very, Shillong is unique because it can incorporate the 8 states, 8 systems. But schools like that, there's no research, nothing. Because they are,
Curriculum is an issue there. You compulsorily have to make 50% of your work which is local and rest has to be global.
But there
Then
was-
you can find the connection.
and there's all, I was surprised to see
That's
Jersey.
actually a very good idea. That how do you
Yes,
create these
that
kinds of
is- that makes
mechanisms in
sense.
curriculum?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you need to.
Yeah,
That's
that
a
makes
very good
really.
The compulsion has to be there. Otherwise, then you
Because
get
this,
carried away.
to transform or to modernize a design like
Yes.
Meklas, this girl.
Yes, Meklas
skirts
outdoors,
that the
yes,
girls
yes.
are wears. So in some tribe, some tribe they have the traditional one, and then girls want to be a little more
Yeah.
fashion trendy. Then they make this beautiful weaves. So
Yes.
then they make new designs which are quite nice, but only for themselves. For
Yes,
one.
that's true. That's what I was
For
saying.
one.
Yeah.
So this girl, she
Yeah.
did like the Teteo sister.
And
they
they've-
have this kind of very, trendy things, but it's only for them. So
Yes.
it's not a production. It's one girl will have one
Yeah.
skirt like this.
Or it goes to Sonia Gandhi. Yeah, it's a fact. A lot of Northeast
I believe
textiles.
the
go-
best saris from the Northeast. are
Yes,
now
the
with
best
princess.
saris in the Northeast go to Sonia Gandhi. Yeah. If something new comes on the Northeast straight, it goes to Delhi, to her house.
I think this was wonderful. And thank you so much for making the effort and coming all the way. Hopefully this is not going to be as far for future shows that you will sort of invite them
Yes,
for. And
please
thank-
sign the book and leave your address so
And
that we can invite you.
Thank you all three of you for your valuable insights.
And thank all of you. Thank you, Maya.
Thank you, Maya.
Wonderful moderators. Thank you, Berenice, Sonam, and Drew. And I apologize for being so in and out. My father, who hasn't been to India for 30 years, is trapped in the airport.